In London, the House of Commons has got back to work after the Supreme Court ruled that Prime Minister Boris Johnson's proroguing of Parliament was unlawful. Well, Johnson flew home from the United Nations in New York overnight and is back in his official residence at number 10 Downing Street. Well, in Parliament, meantime, the Speaker of the House lost no time, said there will be full scope for emergency debates. The government, meanwhile, is planning to put a general election back on the table. Well, earlier, Attorney General Geoffrey Cox addressed the House of Commons. He called on Parliament to pass legislation allowing for a general election.
This Parliament is a dead Parliament. It should no longer sit. It has no moral right to sit on these green benches, and whatever they don't like to hear it, Mr. Speaker. They don't like the truth. Twice they have been asked to let the electorate decide upon whether they should continue to sit in their seats, while they block 17.4 million people's votes. This Parliament is a disgrace.
Emotions running high in the House of Commons. Here with me in the studio now is Quentin Peel, a senior analyst with the think tank Chatham House in London. Good to have you here in person. Extraordinary times in the UK. I mean, we're glued to our screens and to every move in Westminster. How unprecedented is what we're witnessing right now, Mr. Peel?
It's completely uncharted territory, this. It really is dramatic. I think what we're seeing fundamentally, though, and that's what's so important about yesterday's decision in the Supreme Court, is that a Parliament that had got weaker and weaker over the last 40 or 50 years, and the Prime Minister had got stronger and stronger, suddenly the balance of power is tipping back again, and Parliament is being put into a much stronger position to hold the government to account. So you have Boris Johnson with no majority, flailing around trying to find a way through. And we've just seen on Geoffrey Cox there, calling Parliament a disgrace and a dead Parliament. Well, there are many parliamentarians who turn around and say exactly the same about the government.
But it still begs the question. I mean, Mr. Johnson's position, is it tenable, untenable? I mean, he's come back from many, many setbacks.
He has, but he's had, ever since he became Prime Minister, he's lost everything. Now, I think he has a game plan which is still alive. And that game plan is essentially to take a very hard line on Brexit, crash out if necessary, and get an early election where he can present himself as the passionate pro-Brexit, the man of the people, against that ghastly elite in Parliament and indeed in the courts. Now, the question is, can he do that? Because Parliament's somewhat tied his hands by saying you can't crash out without a deal. And they've also said, and you can't have an early election. So it's like he's in a deep hole without an obvious way out.
Why is the opposition leader, Jeremy Corbyn, not able to capitalise on all this turmoil?
Partly because he doesn't want an early election. Why doesn't he want an early election? Because he doesn't trust Boris Johnson not to crash out as in the interim. And secondly, I think he knows that his figures don't look great in the country because the Labour Party is neither fish nor fowl in the Brexit debate. They want to have one foot in the Remain in Europe camp, one foot in the Brexit camp, and their opinion poll ratings have been going down. So he's very cautious, but he nonetheless ought to be making far more progress. The party that's making progress is, on the right, the Brexit Party was stealing Conservative votes, and on the centre-left, you've got the Liberal Democrats, who've been stealing quite a lot of Labour and Conservative votes.
In conclusion, Mr. Peel, where does this leave Brexit? I mean, has the timeline now changed because of the Supreme Court's decision, or are we still on track with that October 31st deadline?
I think the timeline has changed because of what Parliament did to say you can't crash out. I would now expect we will get an extension. How Boris Johnson handles it, having said, I won't ask for an extension, do or die.
Die in the ditch.
I'll die in the ditch, rather. So I think he'll have to, one way or another. Whether he'll find some fiddle to get somebody else to ask for the extension, but then he wants to have that election. And nobody knows how it's going to come out. The country is still incredibly evenly divided. And I think we will have an election and nobody will win a majority.
All right, Quentin Peel, senior analyst with the think tank Chatham House. Sir, good to have you here with us in person.
Nice to be here.